been screaming about these QAnon cocksuckers for months. Hello!
Here with Max Rice and Stephen Anthony Lawrence. Today we wanted to pose a question for you. What is the difference between the U.S. Capitol and Mordor? Well, one simply does not walk into Mordor. This is the Rice and Beans Show. Today we are joined by former Democratic congressional candidate Patrick Brutus from Illinois' 1st District, joining us for a conversation on the Capitol siege, as well as expressing his frustrations as a Democrat throughout his time in Chicago. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us. It is an absolute honor to have you today.
Pleasure to be here. Look forward to the show. Thanks for inviting me, guys.
Of course.
Let's go.
Pleasure's all ours.
Let's go.
So, of course, the major news of the last week is going to be last January 6th, where a siege of sorts happened on the Capitol of the United States. 5 people were killed. It was a rally for soon-to-be former President Trump, with a lot of his supporters protesting what they consider to be a stolen election. The protest itself had members of his party like Rudy Giuliani and Chapman University professor John C. Eastman calling for things like trial by combat. Unfortunately, one Capitol Police officer, Brian Sicknick, lost his life, as well as Ashley Babbitt, a U.S. Air Force vet who was from San Diego, California, who was killed by a member of the Capitol Police. Gentlemen, what are our thoughts on the last few days, things that have come out since then? I know that we watched this sort of from a bird's eye view as it was happening, but knowing what we know now and sort of the feelings that people had expressed after the fact, what are our thoughts on what happened?
I mean, my personal thoughts are, listen, if you haven't had your head up your ass for the last couple months, this is the most unsurprising siege on the Capitol that has ever happened, ever.
A siege? Yes, exactly. It's very surprising they had selfie sticks.
It's unsurprising.
Right.
Like, how could we not have seen this coming? We have Lynn Wood calling for firing squads and Mike Pence to go first. We got Rudy Giuliani going trial by combat. And so we all think it's some random act when a bunch of asshole trolls that live in their mother's basement show up dressed like Braveheart and storm the Capitol. This is gonna be some big frickin' shocker. Oh my god, no! This is the most unsurprising thing that has happened in American politics in the last 20 frickin' years.
Well, let me just say, in the history of insurrections, this is absolutely the worst insurrection ever.
Yes.
And to me, I keep asking people, when you see the videos, right, because we see an incursion on the Capitol and we see the insurrection as it's being described by lefty media, I keep asking myself, who was actually filming this? When you see the security guard running up the stairs, like, who's filming that? Because if he would have turned around, he would have saw whoever it really was filming it. And so this is the worst insurrection ever. And, you know, I just, you know, yes, what happened was tragic in terms of the loss of human life for those who, you know, were injured and killed ultimately in this, you know, 200,000 people plus, you know, event in Washington. And so, you know, we grieve with their families. But in terms of a real Occupy movement, this was absolutely just, you know, FUBAR.
You know, the event happened while I was at work, and so at first I was shocked, but I was most shocked to see like how they actually they sieged and how they broke through. Was the DC Capitol Police just opened the red carpet and went this way, and I saw someone with mobility issues, and the FBI was like holding their back and being like, okay. Like go shit on in Pelosi's office. Go rub your balls in the hallway. It was absolutely ridiculous. And I will say the DC Capitol Police is unique because it's the only security force that answers to the legislative branch. So they answer directly to Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, and Chuck Schumer. So if they were so worried and they're crying now and they're such great people, and Mitt Romney's like, we're good people. We're not like those mouth breathers that like decided to go into the Capitol. But so they're victims now. But the force that was supposed to protect them answers to them, and they let them through because there wasn't even like right now the main argument was like, oh, they were trying to break through and they wanted to avoid conflict. You see them like not even like doing like they're just kind of there, and then they just open the gate and then they start leading them. It's like a bank teller saying, hey, the door's open, the vault's open, go.
Yeah, Max, what you just said is 100% that nobody wants to talk about. In Washington D.C., the law enforcement community is totally it's totally whack, right? The D.C. police don't have jurisdiction over the Capitol. The Capitol police respond in answer to the Congress. The Congress is run by Pelosi. Then there's the park police who maintain the federal property on, all throughout that D.C. metro area. And then there's the federal police, the Secret Service, ATF, Treasury, all those guys, Secret Service, right? So nobody had jurisdiction over anything. And you're right, the U.S. Capitol Police, they were opening the door. Like, come on in, everybody.
Like, what the hell was that?
Just floors 1 through 5 are wide open. Come on in, everybody.
There's some interesting things have come out too. The hardest thing is that, so you look at the permitting process that happened. The national park had originally issued a permit for around 5,000 people. At the last moment, they changed it to 30,000. You're saying now that there was upward of 200,000 people there, which is just beyond the pale. It's 20 or 40 times what they originally thought it was going to be. National Guards, Captain Police Stephen Sun basically 2 days before had said, hey, we're not going to need any National Guard troops, so no plan had been put into place. And then this is a conversation that was confirmed by DC Mayor Muriel Bowser. They basically, when they called the National Guard, they were trying to get troops brought in, and the Army Secretary said, well, the optics of soldiers inside the Capitol is something that they wanted to avoid. So what are the thoughts on the fact that you don't want to see soldiers here protecting what they are meant to protect? From an optics perspective, do we really think it was optics, or I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, well, Trump stopped it, the Pentagon stopped it, they were answering to Trump."
Matt, if the DC Capitol Police would have just said stop, like if there was like any resistance whatsoever, then like that's what really pissed me off. There was zero resistance whatsoever. They weren't even like, "Please, sir," or they didn't even like want them to see if they had bombs or weapons. Because imagine if Iran or China would have just like put 4 people in there with bad intent, they really could have done damage. And so I'm really upset.
And that's another thing we're not talking about. Why are we not talking about the 3 bombs that were found? One found at the DNC, one found at the RNC, and one found, I forget where else. That's another thing we're not talking about.
False flag.
Why are we not talking about the pipe bombs that were found?
Because I don't buy them.
People aren't terrorists.
I don't buy them. I don't buy those bombs at all.
Well, even if you suspend your belief and believe that there were bombs found in different locations, that goes to another level of sophisticated coordination, right? So who could pull that off? Who have we known throughout the last year, right, that has had this, or not even last year, the last 5 years, who has had an ability to coordinate multiple type of things? It's not the MAGA people. It's just absolutely not the MAGA people. It's Antifa, it's BLM, it's those people that have actually been able to coordinate movements. I mean, look, they took over Seattle, they knocked around Portland, they blew up Minneapolis, they were here in Chicago. I mean, that is coordination. So if you want to believe they had bombs, that's not the MAGA people. That's not their profile.
I don't know, but at the same point, you were just a second ago, Mr. You were talking about optics, right? I don't know. If we want to really focus on optics, why wouldn't we have the same exact response that we had for the BLM protesters that we had for these asshats? If you look at the pictures of the BLM protest, literally about maybe, 5 months ago at the Capitol, you see the National Guard already there before the Black Lives Matter protesters were there with full automatic weapons. What does that say about optics?
That they wanted this to happen.
I saw people with automatic weapons inside the building, though.
They were waving and they were seeing the selfie sticks.
Right.
They weren't coming in with tiki torches or knives or guns.
No. I'm not talking about the protesters. The protesters didn't have automatic weapons.
No, I know.
I'm talking about
there.
I know.
I'm talking about Capitol
They had weapons and they were just like, hey, like this way. Oh, you need help?
Well,
you need help?
It's
Do you need a wheelchair?
There's a concern on the number as well. They're saying that it was anywhere between 300 and 2,000. Stephen Sun said that there was 2,000 Capitol Police there. They then came back and said, oh, we actually had about 300 people. Now, you take 300,000 Capitol Police and you put them up against 20,000, 200,000 protesters, it's going to be very difficult.
Remember the Alamo.
I do understand the letting
remember the Alamo.
Because you go into fight or flight reflex. I mean, as trained as these people are, they don't want to lose their lives. It's tragic enough that we lost one. But I think the scariest thing that I've seen going through and watching these videos...
Matt, couldn't they ask nicely? Couldn't they have been like, hey, please don't come through? They literally moved the gate. That's what really pissed me off.
Yeah. During the Alamo, bro, we were the fucking illegal immigrants. So I think that is a little ironic that,
I was just kidding.
We are having it there, but that's another
I think a lot of the videos that are on the ground, there are people and they claim to be, right-wing sort of media, their independent right-wing media just wanted to make sure that they had cameras on the ground to ensure that things were being portrayed fairly. And if you look at some of just the raw footage, I mean, I watched the footage this morning of the woman being killed and what happened. And they were taking bats and they were trying to break through a window into an area, and somebody's screaming out loud, they have a gun, they have a gun. And they kept trying to push through, and that's unfortunately when she was shot and killed. You look at sort of what people are saying. They're saying, you know, we want to have Nancy Pelosi's head on a spike. We're going to hang Mike Pence. I mean, it may have been very disorganized.
With the noose in the background.
Yeah, this is the worst siege ever. The only victim was someone crawling through a window. So they sieged the Capitol, but the only person to get hurt were the seizures, and she was crawling through a window.
You know, but the thing though, if you watch the Periscope thing, you know, you see the big line of people trying to bust through the door, and there's about maybe 4 cops there. When you watch the actual Periscope video, there's like 4 cops and a sea of people there behind them, right?
But they were pushed in. Yeah.
But
you know, you see them step aside. Go ahead, Patrick.
right, but the thing is, though, they were talking about this, you know, Stop the Steal or whatever it was called, rally for not just a day, for a few weeks. And so if we're believing the ability for the federal government at any level, right, of law enforcement to act on actionable intelligence, they should have been better prepared. So to Matt's point, if you got 300 DC Metro or, you know, Capitol Police trying to hold down a building when they said they're going to march from the mall all the way down to the building, and they had like probably 30,000 people at that point at the steps. Why weren't they better prepared? Why is the number 300 to 5,000? Why isn't it concretely identified as we have X? Why are they still, you know, guessing? Why weren't they prepared? When that lady got shot, why were there Capitol Police right there in the stairwell with, you know, AR-15s and battle gear and riot gear? Why were they just right there? Why weren't they cleared out after those folks were breaking glass? So that's why I say it's the worst insurrection ever, because it leads to too many possible questions about the intent behind the act, the event.
Especially when it's the legislative branch.
As we've seen though, you know, as we've heard that Trump was literally giddy about the siege on the Capitol. He refused to call in the National Guard until the mayor of D.C. finally did it.
I thought Mike Pence did.
This is public record.
Didn't Mike
now.
Pence do it?
No.
Yeah, but the president doesn't have control over the National Guard in that sense. The mayor has to make a request, right? Or the governor has to make a request. And so in this instance, yes, I did hear the Pentagon refuse Pelosi's call for National Guard or military to come up, you know, the Capitol. But you know, I don't think that Trump was looking for this outcome. Does anybody here believe that?
I do think he has some responsibility for being like, we're going to show strength, we're going to charge through. Like, that was really dumb, and he got set up. Like, I think he made it, like, that was clearly not his intent. I thought he thought they were going to do like a riot outside the Capitol, just like every day they have. They have protests outside the Capitol.
What did he honestly expect to happen on January 6th, if it wasn't this? Because we know this is totally ceremonial. There is nothing the vice president can do to change those electors. So, what did he expect? What did he expect if this wasn't the outcome?
So I think, you know, just to kind of take a step back, go back to Patrick's point before. So December 19th was actually the time that he tweeted about this. The tweet says that there's going to be a big protest in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. Be there, it will be wild. I think looking at that phrasing is very indicative of what he did expect to happen. Before that point, there had been 2 protests in Washington, D.C., and after dark, they did turn violent. He knows that these things tend to have a tendency to become violent generally because there are counter-protesters. I can't say which side instigates it. Obviously, there's going to be people on both sides that are attacking each other. This is what happens. But there is precedent that it has happened and that there is violence here.
I have an idea.
On the day, the actual quote is, we're going to the Capitol. We're going to try and give them the kind of pride and boldness they need to take back our country. If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
This is our 1776. That has been the battle cry for months. This is our 1776. I just don't understand how we didn't know about this. I have been screaming about these QAnon cocksuckers for months.
No, they have. They let it happen. So now that it did happen, they can justify government action against all sorts of people. Anyone that doubts the election is a terrorist. Right. Anyone that isn't like kissing Mitt Romney's feet right now about like, oh, how'd you do, Lindsey Graham? Are you okay? Are you okay? That all the selfie stick people were in the if you don't subscribe to that, now you're a terrorist, and that's what happened as a result of this. And you know what? And what you were saying right now made me thinking. I'm like, I got an idea. How about we get rid of the right to assemble and the right to speak, because people might say fake news that might embolden terrorists or radicals. And that's my fear.
No, Max.
That's my fear. Because that's what
Beans is on fire, man. What's going on?
Yeah.
In this case, it's one of those things where it's like, are we really going to take a slippery slope that becomes unconstitutional? And looking at the way the Supreme Court is, some people would say stacked or sort of put together, I don't think that we're ever going to reach that place. I do understand that as an argument, but I don't actually believe that we're going in that direction. I do think that is very problematic. Yeah. QAnon has, a lot of problems, especially after the fact. There's reading into all sorts of things. They're saying, oh, well, they said there's going to be a new administration inaugurated. They didn't say it was Biden. Maybe it's Trump. David Hayes, who is one of the big QAnon people, said that there's nothing stopping us from removing Biden by force after he's already put together. I do think that QAnon is a huge problem. I think that's one of the reasons that Parler's being shut down. I think that's one of the reasons that Trump was removed from Twitter, because he does tend to have incendiary positions. But again, that's private party free market. I mean, they're welcome to do whatever they want to as a private company. We give them their power, but I don't ever think that that's going to translate over into the government. I hope it doesn't. It shouldn't.
So let me say one thing here. So
yeah, go ahead, Patrick.
Real quick. So when you two things real quick. Mm-hmm. You're talking about, shutting down the president, access to communication. They waited until this moment, which, to your point about now potentially we're going to see an overreach from government to enact new laws and policies that will be able to, control the way people communicate, move freely, or what have you. I think this event, the ulterior motive or the plan B or C to this, scenario that happened Wednesday was, this infringement on our freedom, right? And so that became the value proposition for what we might, and what we think is coming next. So that's one thing. The second thing I want to say real quick is I quickly forgot. So I forgot, but I'll come back to it.
But that was an overnight
I think
switch.
we're certainly going to start to see an overreach.
And then, by the way, the Nazis, they were the ones that burned down the Reichstag. Same reason, to justify who they want to go after.
I've been thinking about this, and my position on this might actually surprise some people. We got to look at the First Amendment, right? Look at specifically the last sentence of the First Amendment. It protects you from the government. That's it. That's all the First Amendment does. It doesn't give you the right to spout your BS on a private company. It protects you from being arrested by the government.
What about utilities, Beans? Okay? What about utilities? What about cell phone services?
Let's think about this in any other time in human history. Let's say this. Would we want the government to mandate that let's say, for instance, in New York Times, they have to cover Trump and Trump's account of Trump versus how they were, right? Well, do we really want that government interference? I don't think we really do.
We want government protection.
Well, I think the framers were very wise to be very aware that the potential for power would overtake and consume the federal structure, so they were putting in protections so that government would not overreach, right? And I think those concerns exist today still, unfortunately, right? Because we're seeing the encroachment of how overreach impacts, American life. And we're seeing it right now with these guys pulling the kill switch and, harming the enterprise that is Parler, right? Apple pulled out. Google's pulling out, the Play Store is down for these people. I tried to join Parler and I can't even sign in now because I can't get the app, right? So it's, very problematic. I mean, this is a free speech issue, right? So to Beans' point, I think we all agree we don't want this, but this is where we're at, and what is anyone going to do about it? Because Trump was actually warning, the Congress about Section 230 in the last
defense bill.
Appropriations. Right, the last appropriations, the stimulus, right? The stimulus with loaded pork.
Oh, yeah.
That's a cow that Bean would have killed easily.
Yeah,
but I'm telling you, this is where we're at today, and who's going to do anything about it? Lindsey Graham, is out there right now belly aching about, I will do everything I will possibly to stop 230. It's after the fact, dude.
Oh, he sucks.
The ship is gone.
What really concerns me about 230, is imagine if the parties flipped and you had a Democrat president, because Section 230 would officially end a lot of social media companies. Because they're able to thrive based on the...
100% agree on that.
Because they don't have the library.
We have to protect 230.
No, we don't. Because that's the reason why Facebook doesn't have to crack down on ISIS videos, people committing suicide, people shooting each other. They have no liability. Pornhub with child porn. Here's my point. Here's my point. So if he were to get rid of that, that would end these companies because they would get like an avalanche of lawsuits. And so you have a president. No, I'm going to finish my point. I'm going to finish my point. Then you guys can get all angry. And so you have a president. You have a president that's going to enact. He was pushing for something that could potentially make a company lose billions of dollars. End it. And then those same companies unilaterally act to silence that president. And I do think that social media companies have gotten to the point where they are like utilities because the infrastructure that you need in place to create a YouTube, a Google, private companies can't do that. Parler can't do that. They can't have the server space. And so you have these companies that essentially are becoming nations in themselves, and they have unchecked power. And it's not going to sound like a Republican of me, but I do think we need to regulate that. Make them utilities.
Oh, that is the question.
Hold on. Let's think about this. I don't know. I think this would have... This law that you're trying to enact now would have had some pretty messed up consequences if that happened. I don't think we want to go there.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Well, the thing with 230 that I found very interesting was that, correct me if I'm wrong, Max, or anyone, but they were trying to assign the responsibility on, these platforms, right? The Twitters and Facebooks and such as publishers, right? So that they would be able to be subject to liability if the journalistic content got out of control. And they were saying, no, you are the publisher of your own content. But they still control the platform. And so if you're the publisher of the content, how are they able to still pull you from that network, which was what they just demonstrated, which is, them not being able to be regulated, policed, or held accountable or liable. So that's the problem, Beans. It's not that we don't want to be able to have this platform. It's that and we want to protect 230. We want to protect the content from these people, so they need to be subject to 230, which needs to be enacted, in my opinion. Just based on
they're
that
having their cake
provision
and eating
alone.
it too, and a lot of these people are unchecked. They're just individuals that we don't know about. Like Jack Dorsey could do mushrooms one day and decide that he doesn't like people that their favorite color is green, and so anyone in their profile that says my favorite color is green could just be,
but we have the right to refuse service. We got the right to refuse service. Period.
Not to utilities. A water company can't refuse service. An electric company can't refuse service.
You know what? But that's just it. You will be able to
telephone.
You will be able to live without Facebook. I guarantee it. I used to do it.
Nobody reads that service.
You don't need Facebook to live. I guarantee
it. If you look at utilities as what they are currently defined as, internet by itself, yes, could or should be a utility, should be, widely available and widely open to the people. I think that we can all agree to that. In order to function in today's society, at least in America, you should have a level of internet access. However, what is on the internet, I don't think should be regulated as a utility. Everybody should have access to the internet, but that doesn't mean that you have to be
all monopolies should be regulated. So Democrats and Republicans at the state level and at the federal level a little bit have been trying to trust bust a bunch of these social media.
This is what we have.
So if that would solve that problem.
This is what we have in 2-bit dictatorships.
If Patrick and I really could go to Parler or whatever, then I'd be okay with that. But there really is nowhere else.
This is what we have in 2-bit dictatorships. Now, Stalin, they all control the media. We do not want that. You don't want that. Trust me.
Well, that's kind of what I just said. I want to walk back what I said a moment ago. Yeah. I want to walk back what I said a moment ago because it kind of sounded like I was pushing censorship. Yeah. It's not that I don't believe that you should have access to everything that's on the internet. I believe that if you are a private entity that is conducting business on the internet, you should have the right to do the business in the way that you choose. Ultimately, we've all chosen to sign up for these social media sites. We know what they are doing. Unfortunately, they have not taken the level of responsibility that they should. And that's, I think, what they were trying to do in shutting down Donald Trump was that they didn't want to go to a place where they're saying, oh, well, we didn't, he is using our platform to further push a false narrative or what has been widely accepted to be a false narrative. And if something else were to happen and 230 were to pass, they could go back and say, hey, well, by the way, we did what we were supposed to do. We took it upon ourselves to make sure that this didn't happen again, because if they hadn't, who knows what would have happened.
Well,
I think that they're playing...
Right, but that was BS, though.
I agree. I think they're playing both sides. And I don't think that's fair, but I do think that they're watching themselves.
So think about when they pulled the kill switch on Trump. They pulled the kill switch on him after he posted a video that said, everybody go home. And that video had about 15 million views in about the first 30 minutes or so.
They didn't like his tone.
Yeah, he was so because it was later, like he said, go home. And then I think you can markedly demonstrate that, within a period of time, the crowd quelled and dissipated. Okay,
I'm interested.
Now, the second video he posted was the one that he said, as a nation, blah 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 blah. I denounce all the people who did bad things at the Capitol. So they pulled him after he posted 2 videos.
What?
That's totally narrative controlling, that they spun it as, well, this is him still denying the election and all this nonsense.
It's a private company. They have the right to do that.
Beans, go ahead.
But at the same time, man, if we start banning speech and banning, protecting people's feelings, wasn't that the Republican talking point? The Democrats want to protect people's feelings now.
Liberals used to be pro-free speech. Now they're not. ACLU used to defend the Nazis that marched in Skokie. Now they defend the Nazis that want to censor free speech.
I think the ACLU is one of the organizations
they did just come out.
I do have actually an interesting question specifically.
But that's just it. If we start banning feelings and speech on social media, we wouldn't have these awesome moments like that frickin' asshole getting smacked in the face with the twisted tea can. And that's something we all love. Why are we banning that?
But Beans, my big fear is, like, Joe Biden has a bunch of war hawks, like neocon war hawks in his office on both sides, the Bill Kristols and the John Kasyks of the world. And so when they want to start another war in a year, they want to bomb Bolivia for whatever reason, I'm not going to be able to post about that on Facebook or Twitter. And they can kick me or anyone else off, and without even saying why.
Yeah.
Well,
that's wrong.
It is an interesting precedent.
And they will tell you that you are denouncing the federal government,
and you're
lying.
That
is hate speech because
you're spreading misinformation.
Well, so that's
Bolivia has
I do
WMDs.
think that is where the First Amendment, I think, as soon as it is, well, I guess if it's done at the direction of the government, of course the Constitution is going to protect you. Circling back to before, though, kind of going back to Trump's video, there's a level to that which was obviously very pre-recorded. It was recorded in the morning. You can tell. I've worked in film for 20 years, and you're looking at this going, this is morning light. He was, by pre-recording the video and saying that he loved them, like, he probably should have edited that part out. I don't think he necessarily knew what was going to happen, but he at the very least had the foresight to know that something was going to happen that was bad enough that he was going to have to issue a video that was basically saying, hey, you guys need to stop whatever you're doing. I don't necessarily think that means that he knew that he was going to incite something, but if he had the foresight to know that something was going to happen that he was going to have to shut down, so he pre-recorded a video before he even went and made the speech, you have to at the very least consider the option that he knew that what he was going to say, or that what the people around him were going to say, were going to incite some sort of action from the people that were there.
Now, they would call that a conspiracy theory. You sure you want to go with that?
It might be. I'm very well forming a
Arrest him.
Right here and now.
Take his PayPal.
Yes.
Take his
insurrection. You're going to get shadow banned right now.
Sorry, guys. Hey, by the way, I just got us hooked up on YouTube. The show is over. Thank you so much for the last episode ever. It's been great. It's been a good run. No, it's been fun. No, that does make sense. I do understand that's potential. Okay, I get your point. I see that.
So I guess our final thoughts are Max Rice is going to start conservativesonly.com, where conservatives can bitch about free speech. Conservativemingle.com.
You can't. No. That's what I'm saying. The problem is to run. People don't realize that the reason why Facebook and Google and all these companies are free is because you need so much money to invest to let them be free and to operate them. And you need these huge servers and these huge energy costs. And private companies can't do that. Parler can't do. Everyone says that Parler sucks. So I think you got lucky, Patrick. Like, everyone says that it just doesn't work well. It's on a technical level. And like Vimeo costs money. So that's the problem. There is nowhere else to go. And so either get the trust bust hammer, Give us the options to have that conservative only, or that myconservativespace.com, or we need some sort of government body to look over, just how utilities have.
Yeah. I certainly think that instead of trying to move to a new platform and build that up from scratch, which is very difficult right now in today's, quote unquote economy with the big, tech controlling that. I think that, those folks who are feeling deplatformed and shadow banned and being taken off Twitter, I think they should actually fight to remain on Twitter, because Twitter is the platform. End of story. So I think folks need to fight to get back onto platform and try to hold these companies, to a level playing field. Now, the question is, who is actually going to file the antitrust lawsuit that will actually be heard? Because many times in the last 2 years, these guys were paraded down in front of Congress. The guy from Google, I can't pronounce his name, Zuckerberg,
Jack Dorsey.
Jack, they were all down there. And even Mr. Apple
Tim
guy,
Cook.
Mr. Cook, right? So they were all down there. Yeah, okay, thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Jamie.
That's the Wikipedia here. All these guys were down in front of Congress testifying multiple times to hundreds of different questions, and they were all lying. Right? They were caught lying and lying. But is anything going to happen to these people? Absolutely not, because they control Congress, right? And so you're looking at the big companies controlling the members of Congress through, donations and etc. And you're just hearing hot air talk from people who are pretending that they're going to do something when they are not. And so, somebody has to actually do an antitrust, because we've got to break up this monopoly of the big, the big three, right? Twitter,
Google, Apple,
Google,
Facebook.
and
they call it
someone's got to do
Facebook,
that.
Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. But I don't think Netflix is big enough, so it's actually FAH.
Okay, here's my opinion. Here's my opinion. I don't think we should start breaking up Google, Facebook, Twitter, all that. But here's something the government could do. Here's something the government could do and actually should probably consider doing. You know how we do? Yeah. Oh, we're supposed to give subsidies to small businesses starting up, but right now we're giving subsidies to big oil. Big pharma. Maybe we should actually start using subsidies the way they're meant to be used. Small businesses.
Beans 2024. You got my vote.
But do you think that that's going to happen under this administration, when these are the people who were leading the states that shut down small businesses, which are supposed to be the lifeblood of our economy, as we've been told over the last 50 years? That would be a complete reversal of ideology. That doesn't make sense. Like in Lost in Space,
that would not be a good bet to make in Vegas.
Not with this administration. You just had the guy who was trying to break these guys down. But this new guy is getting money. His half of his transition team is these people. So that's not going to happen. I mean, I think Beans has proposed a worthy consideration for us to think about.
And also a lot of the Democrats on his staff were Democrats that were not popular and got kicked out of office. So a lot of his Democrat staffs were losing Democrat senators and governors, like Heidi Heitkamp.
Yeah.
And so
we've had a couple of shows about this, talking about how terrible his transition team, how his cabinet is shaping up. It's we've had a few conversations about this. Gentlemen, we're getting close to the end of our time. Does anybody have any last little things they want to say before we wrap this up for the day?
Oh God. God be with us. God be with us this last week.
Don't steal portraits of Tip O'Neill.
Or you.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that. That was one way to go.
What?
I'll just say it's a wonderful pleasure to be invited to be on this show. I've seen a couple episodes, and so I thank you for letting me join the morning zoo, as it were. And this is a great platform. I think, Max, you guys are doing a great job, and I this is an exciting time to be alive. It's just crazy out there, and I think there's a lot of room for a lot of folks to have their voices elevated, and I think there are, I still remain hopeful that there's more smart people out there than not. So let's just
look
keep
at
our
that, guys. We can agree on something.
Gets it right.
Only on the Rice and Beans Show.
Like, subscribe, share. That's what we all agree on. But Patrick, thank you so much, and we got to have you back on.
Please.
We got to kicked off YouTube. As you said, we got to stretch the limits and see how far we can go. Yeah, but thank you so much.
Push the envelope.
And like, subscribe, share. And there's some intelligent.
Busted again.
What's the Monty Python joke? Hopefully, there's an intelligent life in space because there's definitely none on here.
Big facts.
Yeah.
Right.
Big facts.
Yeah.